So my oldest daughter, she is going to be 36, and she is absolutely loving this little business. She is like, she's just all about it. And she watches the invoices. She's like, Mom, it's been 2 weeks since they paid us. Are we gonna, that kind of thing. Like, she's taking ownership, which is really, really cool. And, but the biggest thing is the connection between Jim and I. As soon as Jim had met her, Kara, they connected because they could talk about baking and cooking and recipes. Then, when she found out he was a Vietnam vet, she was like all over it. She asked him all these questions that nobody had the energy to ask or know the questions to ask. And he was so patient with her and would answer questions, and then she'd just spit out like facts, history facts, and he knew right away what she was talking about. So they had this communication that was really, really unique because they knew, it's like they knew each other's language about history and baking, political stuff, but then, then it went into this baking and cooking. And the week before he passed away, she received an envelope from Jim, and it had the recipe for banana bread in there. So we haven't had a chance to make it yet, but it's the cardamom banana bread. So
it's the banana bread that he was making.
So I'm thinking it was probably the one that he made for you. So that's
very good.
So yeah, and then I had this cake recipe, and so I hadn't quite made that yet because I have another cake recipe that I've used for years and years and years, and so I never got a chance to try it. But so this is my chance to, I tried the recipe. So this was in honor of Jim, as I was able to bake his cake. So yeah.
And here it is.
And there it is. Oh yeah.
And have a coin.
I got it. Yeah, I haven't had this yet.
I think it's pretty to serve with a coin on the side.
Okay, I'll put a coin on the side and then hand me a
All
fork.
right, tell them what's in your phone about the pancakes. Jim's biggest quest was what wine goes with pancakes. That was his biggest quest. What wine goes with pancakes? And I think we kind of found one finally in that almond wine by what's the big California company?
Wilson Creek.
No, unless that's under a bigger umbrella. Modavi. No,
Could be.
Robert Modavi.
Mm-hmm.
It's Robert Modavi, the
Modavi.
almond, and it's sparkling water. It's like almost a champagne or something.
I have a picture that Jim composed with a waffle. So he used my pancake mix. And I have to say, I feel guilty when I say it's my pancake mix. It actually, I got the project started, and when I was ready to finalize it, Kara said, let me just make it one more time. Can I just do kind of whatever I want with it? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. So she threw in teff flour and served it. It's a teff flour, the teff grain.
T-E-F?
F. Two F's. T-E-F-F. It's an Ethiopian grain. Very high in calcium, and it's very nutrient dense. But anyway, so she tried it, served it to all of us, and her dad was just like, what did you do to this recipe? This is like amazing. And I'm like, Kara did it. Kara knows, and so I'm like, we got it. Now we're ready to go forward and sell it. So that's our.
Okay. My restaurant, because I work at Miyako Sushi right down the street.
Oh yeah.
And Brian and Jim would come in every Monday. It would be Monday for lunch. And I would be training. You train on the lunch shift because it's a lot slower. And I would mess up their order every time that they would come in. And his tea was never hot enough. And I always forgot to refill his kettle and all these things. So the whole time, like every time he would pick on me and make fun of me or whatever. And that's how I met Jim. So he would like make fun of me and pick on me. And then I would make fun of him and pick on him too. So it was great. And Brian was just sitting there laughing the whole time. But that's how I met Jim. And then after that, he would come in and he would bring See's Candy, because that's all he did. All he ever did was just do his, yeah, See's Candy. Yeah, so him and Brian would go to See's Candy, and then they would come back, give everyone in the restaurant See's candy.
Oh.
Yeah. He always did that every time, every Monday.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then after that, when he found out I was going to nursing school, he was like one of my main supporters were Jim when I came to school. Like my parents weren't very, I mean, of course they did the best they could, but like Jim was always telling me to stay on track, I want to make sure that you're here, you're not quitting your job, and you're staying on track with school. Yeah. He's a good man. Yeah.
And what did he tell you?
Oh,
If I should die.
but he always, the last couple of years, so I've known him for maybe 4.5 years, 5 years, and the last few years, like maybe the last 3 years, he's been saying, he would do a nice gesture. He would always do nice gestures, but he would do a nice gesture and then he would say, like, I hope you remember this, and I hope that, like, you remember me as being a nice, kind, like, loving man, because that's how I want to be remembered when I leave. And he would say that often. He would always say that. Yeah, and I think that's why every time, once I moved in, like, every night I would have a new, like, plate of food in my house. Like a new, and it was, of course, always something foreign that I've never had before. It was, like, always some sort of, like, soup or pasta or whatever. But that's what he always did. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that was serious.
I've known Jim for almost 30 years. He told me a story when he was in the military. He was many things. He was an Army Ranger, sniper, Vietnam vet, decorated hero. But he was an MP and he served in Germany and for a very brief period of time. But he was a senior leader in his unit, and as an MP, he got called one night. It was very late. It was in Germany. It was wet. It was rainy, he said. And he got a call, and he and his young partner took a Jeep. And the call was unusual because it was in a couple cities over, so it was out of their sort of territory. And Jim said, they must really need help desperately for us to be called in. So he and his partner got on the Jeep, and they went across, again, this cold, wet, rainy German roads. When they got there, it was a bar fight, a typical bar fight, but unlike most bar fights, it wasn't like a riot. It was one great big black American soldier. And Jim was a large man, but this guy, Jim said, was huge. And he figured out that's probably why they called in a unit from outside the area, because this guy was that big. Jim said that his eyes were bulging red with anger. He had carried the anger and the weight of being a black abused man, a soldier, for years, and it was unleashed that night. And he was just breaking the place up. And Jim and his partner basically were able to subdue him. They locked him in and they took him to the Jeep, but the handcuffs were like tiny on this great big guy's hand. So they found some chains in the back and they chained this guy up. And so he said it was terrible, but they chained him to the back seat of the Jeep. Again, it's rainy and cold. And Jim's partner had gotten injured somehow in this tussle. So Jim, being a kind guy that he was, he said, you need to get medical assistance for this. You're going to need a stitch. And so he drove him to the aid station. But then Jim had to transport this guy chained to the back seat of the car all by himself across town on this wet, rainy road. So Jim said, do it. I'll just do it. And so Jim's taken. And then Jim realizes in driving through the rain how hungry he was. He said, I could feel my stomach inside just growling. He said, I'm starving. He said, and he knew, Jim and food. He knew of an incredible restaurant that was there in one of these small towns. So he said, he was taught with doing his duty or feeding himself. So he pulled up in front of the restaurant and he thought for a while, and this guy's chained in the back seat and his eyes are red, he's furious. And Jim said, he turned around in the seat and he says, took a deep breath, he looked in this guy's red eyes with all this hate looking back at him, and he said, you know what? This is probably the best restaurant in Germany, all of Germany. He said, you're going to jail and you're going to be eating bread and water for a long time. What I would like to do is I could go in there and get something to eat and then eat it in front of you, and we're both going to feel terrible. Or I can unchain you. You can walk into that restaurant with me as my guest. I'll buy you the best meal that you've ever had and possibly in your entire life. How do you feel about that? And Jim said the redness in his eyes just kind of dissipated. And he said, okay, sir, that sounds good to me. So he unchained him, and he took the handcuffs off him, and he says, okay, we got a deal. So they went in there, and he says, sir, with a tear going down his face, he said, I don't know how to behave in a nice restaurant like this. I've never been in a restaurant. Jim said, you follow me, do whatever I do, just do that. And so they sat down, they had this exquisite meal. The guy was just so polite. Jim walked him back to the Jeep, and Jim said he had the handcuffs. He says, policy says I'm supposed to handcuff you. And the guy says, that's okay, sir, that's okay. And they went off to jail together. But that's the kindness in Jim's heart. I mean, he melted a person and all that anger that this person had carried all those many years. He was an incredible man, incredible human being. So touched all of our hearts.
What was this officer with the light, you know?
Oh, yeah, he was in basic training and he had a sergeant that he didn't like.
Well, he drank too much.
Yeah, he drank too much, so
This-
he put in a flash bulb, a rather large flash bulb in his light. And when the guy turned it on,
Came home drunk.
he came home drunk, he turned it on and he just, hit his head on the corner of his dresser and
Well, this flash came on, and it's like Jim says he thinks the guy thought he was coming to the end of his life, and this flash came on, and the guy just passed out. And while he was passed out, Jim took his flash attachment back, and the next morning the guy woke up, and he was like really nice from then on. He sobered up. He thought he met his maker.
That's cute.
And we thought that was a good one.
He and Rico, Ann and I had just had, a couple of years ago, Ann and I had our front yards completely re-landscaped and completely redone, and it was beautiful. I hadn't even paid the man the final check for this, and there comes up my driveway Rico and Jim, and I waved to Jim, and Jim came up. Yeah, there's a picture of him. And Rico comes up to my driveway, brand new lawn, landscape, hoists his leg and pees right on my bushes. I said, Jim! I said, I haven't even finished paying this guy, and your dog's peeing on my bush. He says, he looks kind of sheepish, and he says, that's what dogs do when they like something. He says, he's showing you that he likes your yard. I said, thanks a lot. Then the dog sits down, and he squats, and he does poop, and he says, I guess he changed his mind.
You can see he's forgiven. Not quite.
Well, Brenda, we're gonna go to their community and work at their grocery store and ride horses and things like that. And so we're longtime friends of hers. I didn't realize, but we had 2 sets of twins in our wedding, and we just been married 57 years, and it's like, it dawned on me, that was really unusual to have 2 sets of twins in your wedding. And Ruth Ann's the only one that's left. The others have all died. But we had 2 sets of twins in our wedding.
Okay, and while you were teaching school in Illinois, didn't Ruth Ann come to the school or something? Or
I never taught in Illinois.
oh,
In
okay.
Indiana.
I mean Indiana. Sorry.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
did she not come to the school? Or she told me about your teaching experiences. You must have followed each other pretty closely
Yeah,
in the
maybe
school.
that's it. I don't recall her
Because she
visiting.
was saying different things that would happen at the school and how she would come to the school sometimes or something.
I
or-
didn't remember her coming
Okay.
to the school, but that could be just my memory.
Okay.
Goes back a
Well,
long
thank
time.
you, John and Judy, for being
Thank you.
here, and
Yeah.
thank
Uh,
you.